Hi guys, and welcome to my review of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. This wasn't directed by Danny Boyle. This was directed by Mia DaCosta, who was known for the Candyman remake, as well as Marvel's film. And this, just a kind of a disclaimer to put all you guys at ease straight from the get-go. This will be a spoiler-free review. I won't get into too many specifics with this movie. I will just keep this kind of brief and just an overview, generic idea of what my thoughts were on this movie. Yeah, I will be there's other stuff I want to go into more detail. So when this movie has been out a bit longer, I'll get into more of a spoiler-filled review. But for now, I'm just going to kind of keep it brief and as spoiler-free as I can. But essentially, this movie, as expected, picks up immediately after the events of 28 years later, as we follow Spike as he's kind of like falling in with the Jimmy gang, and kind of like simultaneously to that, we also spend more time with Ralph Fiennes' character and his work with the infected, in particular how he kind of like works and kind of like studies and the infection and aims to treat the infection through Samson, the Alpha. So that's pretty much like as much of a kind of like a plot synopsis as I'll give. Going into this movie, if I kind of like rewind when 28 Years Later was released, this was a movie that overall I really enjoyed. Similar to quite a lot of people, the ending just didn't really land for me, where we got introduced into the Jimmy gang in a very kind of like Jimmy Savile Kung Fu Fighting Power Rangers kind of like way. That just didn't kind of like land for me. So it was kind of like an no-brainer, because that was just the note that movie chose to end on. I was kind of thinking, if that's going to be kind of like a focal point for this movie, then I'm not sure kind of like how I feel about that. Then we got then some like kind of like early buzz about this movie came about. Obviously then the trailers came about, which I saw. I was really digging the trailers and stuff, so a lot of that kind of like put my kind of concerns at ease. And just being a fan of this franchise, I was able to just kind of get really kind of like excited and pumped for this movie again going into it. And cut to the chase, guys. I really enjoyed this movie. I think that it's a movie I think it's not a movie that's going to please all of the fans of this, because some people didn't really like necessarily from 28 Years Later the kind of a direction that this franchise is going, where it kind of like moves away from the infected zombie horror and all of that, and moves more to kind of like telling these kind of like human stories. Some people just didn't really like that. And I think on that note, I think that's going to be the main divisive aspect of this movie, where whether you kind of are liking this direction, or whether you are just want to see your kind of like zombie carnage. I think that with whatever kind of like side of the fence you fall on, I think is going to play a significant factor into kind of how you view this movie, because I think that this is possibly the installment where we spend the least amount of time with the infected and all of that. I mean, obviously, all of that's still a component, but it's still very much a backdrop to it all, similar to how it was in 28 Years Later. But I think even more so, even more so, it's pushed more to the background here because we just spend so much time obviously following the Jimmy Gang and Ralph Fiennes' character and all of that. So yeah, I thought that this movie also just keeps up with the franchise's tradition of just delivering some of these really grim, really gnarly moments. I think that there's some moments in this movie that are like the most gnarly that we've seen in the entire franchise. I think that's largely due to the Jimmy Gang here, who are just absolutely despicable, just human beings. We have Jack O'Connell playing the leader here, who does just such a fantastic job of just being this really sinister and sadistic, malicious leader. And it one kind of like will kind of say is, and I feel that this is going to sound a little bit contradictory in light of what I had just said about the infected being more of a backdrop to it, but we do still get through obviously spending more time with Ralph Fiennes' character. We do get a little bit more exploration into how the infection works, and what are kind of the possibilities and limitations of all of this and stuff, and can we kind of like learn any new stuff about the infected and the infection that we didn't know in previous installments, similar to how we got in 28 Years Later, where we have obviously the baby being born from an infected mother who is unaffected by the infection. And all of that kind of like little nerdy kind of like little debates that we all kind of like to have and stuff. There's a little bit more of an exploration here through the relationship between Ralph Fiennes' character and Samson, the Alpha. This all kind of like moves towards basically these two plot threads with Ralph Fiennes' character and the Jimmy Gang crossing paths. That's not really a spoiler in the trailer. It shows that those two paths end up crossing, and when it does, it's just fascinating. It's just wonderful. I thought the engagements between Jack O'Connell and Ralph Fiennes were just really intriguing. I think Ralph Fiennes is just an absolute delight here. I think that he just delivers so much humanity to the story, but also he just is able to somehow just inject so much humor into this movie as well, just despite all the kind of the darkness that's going on, and all of this kind of like just moves towards a finale that is just so overblown, so over the top. I think this finale is the most over the top that this franchise has ever been. But I mean that in the most positive way. I just all throughout it, I just had a massive smile on my face. I just thought it was fantastic. It all kind of like just ends up on the note similar to how 28 years later did. I don't mean in that necessarily in a way of, oh well, that what kind of like what, but that was just like under like a bad note to end in. I don't mean it in that sense, because I think the note that we end this movie on is much more satisfactory. But what I mean is, I think that again we just end it on a note that gives some indication as to where we're going to go with the next installment. But having said that, I do think that this movie again just has its own unique flavor that kind of like sets it apart from the other installments. And I think each installment in this franchise has done that. It's always given a little bit of its own little flavor, a little bit of its own identity, and this movie continues to do that. So yeah, while it does give those indications into kind of like where we're going in the next installment, there is also, because we've got sort of a slightly a different flavor with each of these installments, there is also a little bit of kind of like unknown here, as where you're kind of not quite sure how it's all going to come together and exactly what you're going to get here. But yeah, like I said, guys, I just thought that this was another really solid installment in this franchise. I absolutely loved almost everything that we got in this movie, yeah, I can't wait to see what they do next. Yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this review. If you enjoyed this review and you want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you've seen this movie, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your thoughts were, and if you haven't seen this movie, let me know about what your excitement level is, what your expectation is, all of our fun stuff going into this movie. Let me know down in the comment section, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. You guys take care.